stand. American workers build better products than anybody. Made in America means something. Like Andrew said, when the playing field is level, America will always win. But, you know, what we need is folks who actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk. We don't need folks who, during election time, suddenly are worrying about trade practices. But before the election are taking advantage of unfair trading practices. In Ohio, if you stand with me, if you choose the path we're talking about, we're going to help big factories and small businesses double their exports. And we'll sell more goods around the world stamped with Made in America. And we'll create 1 million new manufacturing jobs in the next 4 years. We can do that. And I need your help. And move forward. That's not all we're going to have to do to rebuild our economy. We've got to train our workers to fill good jobs. That's why the second part of my plan is to give more Americans the chance to earn the skills that they need to compete. Now, education was the gateway of opportunity for me. It was the gateway of opportunity for Michelle. It was the gateway of opportunity for a lot of you. Andrew, right now, he's studying to get his degree, with some help with Pell Grants that we expand. Because he understands that even though he's doing well now, we've constantly got to build up our skills. It's the gateway to a middle-class life. Today, millions of students are paying less for college because we finally took on a system that wasted billions of taxpayer dollars using banks and lenders as middlemen. And we said, let's give the money directly to students, and we've been able to help millions or more young people in education. So, now you've got a choice. The other side, you look at their budget, they're proposing to gut education just to pay for more tax breaks for the wealthy. That's one path. I'm offering a different path. We can decide that in the United States of America, no child should have her dreams deferred because of an overcrowded classroom or a crumbling school. No family should have to set aside a college acceptance letter because they can't afford it. No company should have to look for workers in China because they couldn't find any with the right skills here in the United States of America. So, Cincinnati, I'm asking you to help me recruit 100,000 new math and science teachers in the next 10 years. And improve early childhood education. Let's help give 2 million workers the chance to learn the skills they need at community colleges that will lead directly to a job. Let's work with colleges and universities to keep tuition down, to cut in half the tuition costs over the next 10 years. We can meet those goals together. That's the future we can choose. Third thing, I've got a plan to control more of our own energy. You know, after 30 years of inaction, we raised fuel efficiency standards so that by the middle of the next decade, your cars and trucks will go twice as far on a gallon of gas. That will save you money, that helps our national security, and it helps our environment. We've doubled the amount of renewable energy we generate from wind and solar. And thousands of Americans, including here in Ohio, have jobs today building wind turbines and long-lasting batteries. We are less dependent on foreign oil than at any time in the last 2 years. Now, you've got a choice between a plan that reverses this progress or one that builds on it. Because as long as I'm president, I'm not going to let oil companies write this country's energy plan. And I'm not going to let them keep on collecting $4 billion in taxpayer-funded corporate welfare. We've got a better path. We'll keep on investing in wind and solar, clean coal technology. We'll invest to help farmers and scientists harness new biofuels to power our cars and our trucks. Let's put some construction workers back to work, rebuilding our homes and our factories so they waste less energy. And we've got to develop a nearly 100-year supply of natural gas that's right beneath our feet. We can do it in a way that's safe. And if you choose this path, we can cut our oil imports in half by 2020. And we can support about 600,000 new jobs in natural gas alone. That's a plan for the future. It's not a plan looking backwards. Number 4, we're going to reduce our deficit without sticking it to the middle class. I put forward a plan that will reduce our deficit by $4 trillion. You don't have to take my word for it. Independent analysis, they've looked at it. I appreciate that, but just in case you're skeptical, we've actually got real numbers behind it. I've worked with Republicans in Congress to already cut $1 trillion in spending. And we're willing to do more. I don't want a government that's wasting money. It's got to be lean, it's got to be mean, it's got to make sure that it's focused on the people that are working hard but need to ladder up. It's got to be focused on doing the things that help us grow. And there are programs that don't work, and we got to admit that. I want to reform the tax code so it's simple and it's fair. I've actually done my own taxes. I don't know about some of these other folks, but I've done. So I know we can make it more simple and more fair. But I also think we've got to ask the wealthiest households to pay a little bit more on incomes over $250,000. The same rate we had when Bill Clinton was president. The same rate we had when the economy created nearly 23 million new jobs, the biggest surplus in history, and we helped a lot of millionaires to boot. Remember why? Because if we're helping middle-class families, what happens? You don't spend the money. Middle out, not top down. Now, in fairness, my opponent has a plan too when it comes to taxes. But as President Clinton pointed out, there's one thing missing from it: arithmetic. You know, they talk about, they say the most important thing we have to do is reduce the deficit. Right? That's what they say. Right. Then the first thing they do is to spend trillions of dollars more on tax breaks for the wealthy. Not just the Bush tax cuts, on top of the Bush tax cuts. $5 trillion more. So they must have skipped math class when they were in school. Because that math does not add up. And whenever you ask them to explain the plan, they won't. They won't say how they pay for $5 trillion in new tax cuts. I understand how much $5 trillion is. I know sometimes this money, billions, trillions, it gets all mixed up. $5 trillion over 10 years means $500 billion every year. Now, $500 billion is about the amount of our entire defense budget. Everything we spend on our military. Everything. Troops, planes, carriers. It's about $500 billion. So they're saying they're going to give a tax cut equivalent to our entire defense budget every single year. But they can't tell you how they're going to pay for it.
They ain't going to pay for it.
And the truth is they can't pay for it without raising taxes on middle-class families. But then, on top of that, they want to spend another $2 trillion in new military spending, they say, without adding to the deficit. But they don't tell you how they're going to do that. The only thing they can do is to keep trying to bluff their way through till November. And hope that you won't call them on it. But understand, Cincinnati, look, I want to work with them to reduce the deficit. I've said, you know, if the Republicans need more love, if they want me to walk the dog or wash their car, I'm happy to do it. And you know, I genuinely believe that most Americans, Democrats or Republicans, they just want us to solve problems. So I'm ready and willing to work. But I refuse to ask middle-class families to pay over $2,000 more so that millionaires and billionaires can pay less. I refuse to cut clean energy investments and put 125,000 clean energy jobs here in Ohio at risk just to give me a tax cut or Romney a tax cut. I refuse to ask more than 360,000 Ohio students to pay more for college, or kick children out of Head Start programs, or eliminate health insurance for millions of Americans who are poor or elderly or disabled just to pay for a tax cut for wealthy folks who don't need it. And I will never turn Medicare into a voucher. Folks who've worked hard their whole lives, they shouldn't be spending their golden years at the mercy of an insurance company. They should retire with dignity and respect. And yes, we've got to reform and strengthen Medicare for the long haul, but we're going to do it by reducing the cost of health care, not by dumping the cost on the seniors. Same thing with Social Security. We'll keep the promise of Social Security by taking responsible steps to strengthen it, but we're not going to turn it over to Wall Street. Now, rebuilding our economy is essential, but our prosperity at home is also linked to our policies abroad. And current events, the events of the past week, obviously remind us of that. 4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq, and we did. I said it's time for us to start winding down the war in Afghanistan, and we are. We've got a new tower rising above the New York skyline, even as Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat and Osama bin Laden is dead. But what happened this past week underscores that we still face threats in the world. Now, we can't just pull back. We've got to stay engaged and involved for our security. But we've also got to remain vigilant. That's why, so long as I am Commander-in-Chief, we will always have the strongest military the world has ever known. We'll do what's required to keep our personnel safe around the world. And when our troops come home, when they take off their uniform, we will serve them as well as they've served us. Because in America, no one who fought for this country should have to fight for a job or a roof over their heads when they come home. But again, here you've got a choice too, because my opponent said it was tragic for me to end the war in Iraq. He still won't tell us how he's going to end the war in Afghanistan. And while he wants to spend more money on military programs that our Joint Chiefs say won't keep us safer, I'll use that money that we're no longer spending on war to pay down our debt. And to put more people back to work. Rebuilding some of these bridges around Cincinnati. Rebuilding schools and runways. After a decade of war, it's time to do some nation building here at home. So Cincinnati, that's the choice you face. That's what this election comes down to. 15 days and you'll start making that choice. You know, and over again, we've been told by our opponents that their way is the only way. That since government can't do everything, it should do almost nothing. If you can't afford health insurance, hope you don't get sick.